Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traven, and in this video we're doing my top 10 reads for 2024. Recently I put out my end of the year tag, and this top 10 list is going to have some overlap with the choices I made there, but I thought by doing a top 10 we'd get a little bit more depth into the books I read, and I did read 200 titles this year, so I feel like it's deserving to take a bit and look at a few more titles than I did in that very brief overview of the year. These are ranked, so these are my top 10 books for the year. We're going to start at number 10, and it's the only book I couldn't find as I was running around frantically trying to collect these titles, and that is Grady Hendrix' nonfiction title, Paperbacks from Hell. So this is a book that details the trends in horror from I think starting from the 1960s and going to the 70s and 80s. It gives a number of really interesting titles. It also now has a line of books being released, I think, through Barnes & Noble. But there's an imprint of Paperbacks from Hell that are key titles from this book. Paperbacks from Hell was massively entertaining. I loved the different sections, the tongue-in-cheek, very funny style of Grady Hendrix' approach to talking about the different trends within the horror scene, from like demonic possession, creepy kids, dolls. He talks about animals, all different manner of subcategories, and it was just a lot of fun to read. A really good page turner for a nonfiction book, especially one that could have been so dry. I really appreciated his style. Number 9 is going to be Mushroom Blues. So this was mentioned in my last video. This is a noir detective story set in a fungal punk setting. So fungal punk is like mushroom people and mushroom cities, and it deals a lot with this idea of like a hive mind collective. It deals a lot with racism in a way that I found really refreshing, in that the main character is one who is racist and is having to come to terms with that as they're partnered up with one of the fungus people. It kind of drags a little bit in the middle, so that's why it's not maybe a little bit higher on this list than it could be. But the fact that it went from something that I was just picking up as kind of a curiosity to something I really felt was well written and an entertaining story with interesting parallels with post-World War II occupied Japan, I walked away with it with a lot more than what I came in expecting. So that's why this gets my number 9 spot. Number 8 is going to be Bands of Mourning. This is the third book in Mistborn Era 2. I chose this one because I feel like it has the best story that doesn't become overblown. It also has the most development between Waxilium and Steris, which is a relationship that I grew to love as the series progressed. So it had really romantic scenes between the two of them as they are learning more about the set and their plans for the world. It's a couple of volumes into this series, so I don't know if I'd recommend it outright, but you should definitely be reading Mistborn Era 2. It is a strong title from Sanderson, for sure. I'm really getting into lit RPG and progression fantasy. I want to read more of it in 2025, and this is kind of the poster child of the moment for that genre. I've heard that the series only gets better from here, although watching Daniel Green's video, he said there is a dip later on with a card game level that he didn't care for, but I love card games, so hey, maybe that'll appeal to me. But yeah, for Dungeon Crawl Carl, my only real complaint about this was that I felt it lacked a really punchy climax. We worked through the first 2 levels. We had a lot of dangling threads to move forward with. I'd like to see each of these books be a little bit more self-contained, with an issue or a problem introduced at the beginning of the book that's resolved by the end, in the same vein as Jim Butcher's Dresden Files series. So that's like the one thing that I'd like to see. But characters are fun, setting is amazing, it gets right into the action, it doesn't let up, it is a page turner, a lot of fun. I'd highly recommend it if you are at all interested in lit RPG, or if you like RPG systems, if you like progression fantasy. It's a great title if you haven't heard of it, but I think pretty much everybody has at this point. The Ice Pick Surgeon by Sam Kean. So this is a nonfiction book about the questionable things we've done in the name of science. Sam Kean was listed in a comment, actually, by someone who was talking about how his writing is a lot like Roach, who wrote Stiff, which I read last year. And it is a very similar style of kind of jumping between these different ideas, picking a very interesting subset of science or history to look into. I love the way that this was set up. I love the stories in here, as creepy and as questionable as they were definitely intriguing, and I learned a lot, and it was a wild ride. It also had some crossover with Stiff, because this also discusses grave robbing for science. And so that was also nice to see, to have that reinforced with the other nonfiction title I had recently read. So if you're looking for a nonfiction title that's very approachable and has a lot of what I would call fun subject matter, it's very dark, but it's definitely interesting, and it definitely keeps you wanting more and keeps you moving forward as they're telling all these very macabre stories. I definitely recommend The Ice Pick Surgeon. Number 5 is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, which I felt was a better title than Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. I liked it a little bit more because I felt like this one was solvable. Like, I could figure out what was going on. I was very close to doing so. So it was a lot of fun. I liked the fact that we had some returning characters, but it wasn't like a rehash of the first book. I liked the continuation of the meta narratives that this series is now becoming. It's becoming a staple of these books to have meta commentary on mystery whodunits, and in this one there was a lot of talk about, like, okay, by this part of the story you need to have a murder, and by this part of the story you need to have rounded up your suspects, and by this part of the story everyone should know like enough information to solve it. And it's fun seeing him be like, okay, well, listen, like we're a couple pages away from where I said that we should be, but like we'll get there soon, like I promise. And it's just, I really like that. I know there were some comments online saying that they felt like that was confusing, so that might not be your thing. But if you're a fan of murder mysteries, if you're a fan of whodunits, and you like having that meta-narrative layer on top of your storytelling, this is a great pickup. I don't think you have to read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone before reading this one, but it would definitely help, especially with the ongoing conflict and the ongoing characterization of the main character and his love interest. So it isn't one that I would recommend going into without having read the first book, but if you enjoyed the first book, definitely pick up the sequel, and also pick up Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret, because I just finished reading that. That was also a lot of fun. As much as I enjoy the Ernest Cunningham series, I felt like How to Solve Your Own Murder was an even stronger mystery title for this year. I had so much fun going through this and trying to be very meticulous with figuring out. Had a great time making a video, like dissecting all the different relationships and trying to figure it out. And I was so close. I had figured out everything except for the one little detail that I needed, but I felt good having finished it. And I also really liked the setup for this book. So this is about a woman who, when she's very young, she gets a prophecy that she's going to be murdered, and she spends the rest of her life paranoid of that day coming around. So when she finally is murdered many, many years later, and her niece comes to investigate, it becomes very complicated because she already has a dossier on pretty much everybody, because she doesn't know who it's going to be. She just has this vague, these vague like fortune teller type hints as to what is going on. And so it was fun trying to unravel what had happened, try to unravel her past. And it was fun to jump back and forth between the present and her time as a youth with her friends, and how both of those stories came together to tell a very gripping mystery. I really liked this one. I feel like this was the most approachable mystery I read this year. I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend that you pick up a copy and take a look. Number 3 is going to be Bookshops and Bone Dust, a sequel I liked a little bit less than the first one, but is still one of my favorite cozy fantasy series. And I know Legends of Lattes is like the big example right now for cozy fiction, but it's there for a reason, and it got picked up by a major publisher for a reason, because it gained a lot of traction. It has a lot of fans. So I liked the exploration of the characters here. The fact that this is a prequel, I thought was going to be to its detriment, and to a certain extent it is, because you lose a lot of the the tension of a series when you're dealing with a prequel. They're going to get through the conflict and be okay in the end. But I do think that it did a good job with establishing good stakes, building the world a little bit more. It did serve a purpose both in the romantic aspects of the original book, as well as there's primary impetus for making a coffee shop. So it was really appreciated, the nods to the original. Plus, I really liked the cozy feels of the library in this setting. I think I mentioned in one of my shorts that of all the fictional worlds, I'd want to live in this one and just live in a bookstore there, because it seemed really cozy and really pleasant. So yeah, cozy fiction reads are another one of these subgenres that I'm really getting into over the past couple of years, and this was probably the strongest one I read this year. Well, that's not true. One of those strongest ones I read this year, so definitely up there on my list of cozy fantasy read recommendations. We're going to keep the cozy fantasy train rolling with Emily Wilde. I read both the first book and Map of the Outer Lands this year. Loved both of them. Love Emily Wilde. One of my favorite characters this year, fictional crush. I mentioned it elsewhere. I think that her particular brand of quirkiness and social anxiety works for me in a way that is not as heavy-handed as I've seen it elsewhere, and handled a fair bit better with her gradually developing relationships and understanding a little bit more about social mores and navigating that space. But she's still every bit as quirky and hyper-fixated on her job in the sequel as she was in the first book. There is developments with her and Wendell Bramblebee's relationship in the second book, which I really appreciated. I'm glad that it isn't just like a will they, won't they, or this really slow burn kind of thing, especially considering that I believe engagement was brought up in the very first book. So a lot of fun to read both of these books. I loved both. I think both were 5 stars, and even higher recommendations for me for that kind of cozy fantasy read. These are, I don't know if I'd say they're low stakes, but they're definitely not like world-altering stakes. This isn't like a high fantasy, world-ending catastrophe kind of story. It is very localized. There is very real danger to the characters, and it is something I do appreciate about the books. But there's also just a lot of heart, and it's a lot of character-driven aspects to it that I really enjoy. So I recommend these if you're looking for like a good romantasy read, or you're looking for some cozy fantasy. highly recommended. Both of these titles were great. And that leads to number 1, which should not be a surprise if you watch the other video, which is House of Frank, another cozy read. So my top 3 are all cozy fantasy. You can tell what era I'm in right now. House of Frank had everything that these other cozy fantasies had, but packaged in a way that just hit me emotionally a lot stronger than the other two. I don't want to get into spoilers, but there are some things happening in my personal life that are reflected in a fantasy element in this book, and it was just nice to see that kind of story, this meditation on grief and the different ways that we approach it and try to cope with the loss of a loved one, was all very poignant. And just for me right now, not only is this an excellently written book and one that is in the genre that one of the genres I'm most interested in reading right now, but also just for me personally is telling a story that I wanted to hear right now, or I felt like I needed to experience at the moment, and really got to me. And so that is why it is the number 1 book for this year. And that's going to do it for this list of my top 10 books for this year. I'm going to be putting out a top 10 comics list as well, highlight a few other titles, and just talk about the things that made me the most excited this year. I hope your reading journey is going well. I hope 2024 was a great reading year for you. I hope 2025 is even better, and that you are loving the things you're reading and excited about the next reading adventure you're going to go on. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. Let me know if you've read any of these titles in the comments below so we can start a conversation about your thoughts and feelings on them. And until the next one, take care.